Ciao! Welcome to a new class on Food Photo Tribe. Today we talk about compositing in Photoshop for food photography. This is a slightly more advanced editing technique, but don't worry, I'll explain to you how to do it and you can do it super easy and it's gonna change the way you do your photography and you're gonna love it. So what is compositing? Compositing is an editing technique used to blend two or more images together to create one final stunning shot. So basically the concept of compositing is that you take pieces from different images and you merge them together to create the final image. I've got some examples here. We've got the cake. This is a composite of 6 images, one for the cake, one for the candles, one for the background, one for the glass, and some more for all the sparks. Because obviously, like the sparks were nice in one photo, not so nice in the next one, and then nice again in the other one, in the next one. So I took all of the nice sparkles and I put them all together in one image. In the hot chocolate, this is a more simple compositing of 2 images, one for everything and a second one for the top, the cream on the hot chocolate, because while I was busy building my set, the cream died. So then I took, I redid the cream and I put it on top of my other image. And then this one, which is a more complex and a little bit more advanced editing of the mince pies, I'm actually going to show you the process of this just a little bit later to see, to show you that what you can do with compositing, basically. So when should you use this technique? When should you composite your images? Well, sky is the limit. Just go with your imagination. You can use it to fix some mistakes, for example, when the food dies, or you can use it to multiply yourself. For example, if you have a big scene and you want multiple hands doing different things, but you're by yourself, then what you can do is do one action, take a shot, then move, do another action, take another shot, then do a third action, take another shot, and then compose all of these together in one image to make it look like there are more people. Multiply objects, same concept. If you have only one pretty bowl and you want 3, just shoot them separately, compose them together. You can correct the composition. For example, if you have a piece of background that is, ugly or broken, or you can composite another piece on top of that one. You can clean spills and mess, and you can add splashes to your drinks, for example, or action shots and everything. So I will show you how to do all of this. Now, there are a few basic concepts, and obviously this is an editing technique. It's a little bit more advanced. So what you need to be able to do composites is a tripod, very important, markers. So if you want to move your objects, markers are all those little things like coins or Lego bricks that you can put around your props to mark their position if you need to move them, so that you can make sure that you put them back exactly where they were. Obviously a laptop, a tethering cable that will connect your camera to the laptop, Adobe Lightroom and Adobe Photoshop, obviously. And then as optional things, if you want to do self-portraits, for example, move around and use the hands, then you can either use the self-timer on your camera or you can have a remote trigger that will make your job easier. Now, the fundamentals of compositing. Again, this is a slightly more advanced technique. But if you know how to do it, and if you know what to look for and how to shoot it, then the editing part is going to be so much easier. You just need to know how to shoot it properly so that it will make sense and it'll make your job easier in Photoshop. So doing compositing takes a little bit of planning. So you have to have you have to imagine your final scene in your head, and you're like, yes, this is what I want from my images. How do I make it happen? What elements am I gonna need? What pieces will I need to shoot? How many images will I need to shoot in order for me to be able to create that final image that I envision? Okay. For example, if you want to create a scene of a table of 4 people and you're by yourself, you know you're going to need at least 4 images, because 1 for each set of hands, basically. So it takes a little bit of planning. Also, you need to know that everything, when you do compositing, the least amount of movement in your scene and with your equipment and stuff, the easier it's going to make your compositing, because you need to shoot on a sturdy tripod. You need to have a consistent angle, a consistent frame, a consistent light, consistent exposure, and consistent settings throughout all of your images. Because again, if you're going to pile them on top of each other and create, so I'm gonna assume that you know what layers in Photoshop are. So if you need to put one layer on top of the other, they need to be almost identical, except for that one piece that you need changing. Okay, so everything else needs to be the same. You can't change exposure halfway through. You can't change angle halfway through. You need to shoot the images with the exact same settings, even camera settings, and you can even change your focus. So make sure that you shoot in manual focus. Okay, because otherwise the depth of field between your props and your things will change, and it's gonna create something weird. Okay, so once you know all these basic concepts, let's see how we're going to do it, first in Lightroom and then in Photoshop. Let's see exactly the process. I will show you. So we're in Lightroom, and today I'm going to show you how I created this image. This is the final image, and it's a compositing of 4 different images. Now, what I did here, I took one image for my main background. So that is my main image for everything, my props, my cookies, all my other food, and the top of my hero coffee. Then there's a second image that I used for the top of the coffee in the background. Then there's a third image that I used for the glass, the color of the coffee here, and the nice line between the coffee and the foam. And then there's a fourth image that it's actually only this little bit over here. So what are these images? This is my background image, my main image. So from this one, I really liked the coffee top and everything else, the cookies, but obviously this needs to be redone and a few other bits and pieces. And also what I don't like about the main background image is that the coffee here is not neat. There's this like milk spill and the foam is not very nice. And also, this guy, it really bothers me because it's too close to the edge and it's not as nice and all the other ones. So once I decided that this is my basic background image, then I took this piece, this little guy from this image. So this is the image number 1. Then I've got this image. I really liked how neat the coffee, the color of the coffees and the line between the coffee and the foam. So that's what I did. That's what I took from this image. And then from this one, I took the back, sorry, the top of the back coffee. Okay. But as you can see, this one's got 3 cookies. And then I decided that I only wanted 2 cookies. This one doesn't have a nice top. So this final image is a compositing of these 4. Now, before you move into Photoshop, what you want to do is you want to do a basic edit of your images, and you want to develop the raw file. So you want to make sure that your white balance and your exposure and your settings and your shadows, everything is consistent. So as you can see, if I flick through them, they're very consistent in terms of lighting, editing, and everything else. Yes, the position changes slightly, but we're going to fix that. So this is what you want to do in Lightroom. And then once you've done that and you've edited your images, you select them all, you click with 2 fingers or click with your right click. Then you go edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. And then we move on to Photoshop. Now we're in Photoshop and we have our images open as layers. So as you can see, they're all here, each and every one. Great. So now what do? First thing we want to do is we already know what our base image is because we've decided this in Lightroom. So I know that my background image is this one. So I'm going to rename this background. When you do compositing, it's quite important to keep the layers panel organized so that you know exactly which piece you're taking from which image. So from this image, I know I'm only going to take that little guy. So this one I am going to call little guy, little guy drop. Okay. Whatever works for you, really. Make it fun. From this image, I know I'm going to take the glass and the foam. So this one I am going to call glass for the hero. And from this one, I am going to take the top of the back glass. So I'm going to rename that top background coffee. Yeah, just name it whatever works for you. And in terms of ordering the layers, again, in this case, it doesn't really matter as long as your background layer is at the bottom. Okay, so make sure that your background main layer is at the bottom. Okay, so now we start with the actual compositing part. Now, the basic concept of compositing is that you are going to use layers and layer masks to reveal or hide some parts of each layer so that we can create one final image and put all of those pieces from each layer on top of our background. And by using layer masks and brushes, we are going to start by making invisible every layer that we're not going to work on. So we're going to start with our top layer and our background. These two are visible. Now what we want to do is we select the layer and we go ahead and add a layer mask to it. Now the basic concept about layer masks is that with white you reveal what's in the layer and with black you hide what's in the layer. So by pressing, now we can see that the layer mask is white. By pressing Command I on your keyboard or Control I if you have a Windows machine, what you do is you make the layer mask black, which means you're hiding this layer and only showing the background layer. So, and again, if we press Command I, now it's white, which means we're revealing all of this layer and not the background layer, just this layer. So this is the concept for layer masks. And what we are going to do is basically we are going to hide every layer and brush on to the parts of the mask that we want to reveal and show in our final image. This is going to be easier done than said. So let me show you how to do this. So create a layer mask first, then press Command I to invert the layer mask. So we've hidden everything. Now we press B, or we go here and we select our brush tool. And with the brush tool, we are going to paint over the part that we want to reveal. Now, first things first, what settings should we use for the brush tool? Opacity 100, because if you go any lower, what happens is that you're only going to reveal a very faint part of the image, and that's not what you want. You want opacity to be at 100, so that one brush stroke, you get nice definition on there. And flow is basically just the speed of the brush, so whatever works for you, really. And then here, you want the hardness to be at about 50%. You don't want the edges to be super, super sharp, because this way, it's going to be easier for you to hide mistakes or blend in because we want to blend it in to make sure that it looks natural and it doesn't look like it's painted on top, right? Now, basic concept with brushes, again, it's that same thing with black and white. Down here, you can select the color of your brush. Now, white painted on a black mask will reveal, right? While if you press X, that will swap your colors down here. Now the brush is black and black will hide. So X to get a white brush that will reveal. X again to get a black brush which will hide. Yeah, so by using a combination of black brushes and white brushes, we're going to reveal and hide certain parts. Now I'm using a white brush to reveal the top of the coffee that I really want. There we go. I'm gonna do this quickly now because obviously this is just a tutorial, but obviously you can take your sweet time to make sure that everything looks great and everything looks perfect, and you can zoom in and like just make sure that the edges don't look painted. You see how easy that was for me to do, and that's because this glass has not moved. That's why it's important to be consistent when you shoot for your compositing, because if things move around, then it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to paint and make it look realistic. Now I've painted it quite roughly and you can't tell the difference, right? You can't see the edges of where I painted, and that's because nothing else in my scene has moved and my exposure is consistent and everything is consistent. Awesome. Now we can move on to the second layer. This one is the glass. So we want to get this nice glass with a nice line there and paint it on top of our background. Now, as you can see, if I make this visible and invisible, the glass is moving slightly, okay? So this is gonna be a little bit more of a challenge for us. That's why we don't wanna move anything, but obviously sometimes that's not possible. So how do we fix this problem of slight movement? So you're going to make this layer visible. You're going to drop the opacity to about 50 to 60%, whatever works, so that you can see both this layer and the background layer. Then you press V for to be able to move the top layer. And what you want to do is move it so that it perfectly matches the background layer, so that the edges of the glass match the edges of the glass in the background layer. So that should do it pretty much. So, and if you look at it and then you get back the opacity back to 100, and now if you make it visible and invisible, you should see that the edges of the glass are roughly the same. Now we want to do the same thing as we did with the top layer. So we are going to create a layer mask on this layer. Command I to make it invisible, so to invert our mask. This one we can switch on just to see how pretty the image is going to look. So Command I to invert the mask, and then we press B for our brush, and then with a white color we go and brush the nice coffee onto our glass and the nice line. Now you can zoom in. You can reduce the size of your brush. Obviously, again, this is just a quick tutorial that I'm doing for you guys, but you can take as much time as you need to make sure that you don't get stuff like this, for example. So now I'm going to press X for my black brush, and I'm going to paint again over that edge because I made a mess there. I also made a mess here. So there we go. I want that edge to be sharp, and also I made a mess here because now it looks like it's fading. So again, take your sweet time and zoom in as much as you need to, and use different size brushes to make sure that you do this properly, because no one wants to see where you painted. So keep going back and forth from pressing X with black brush and white brush to make sure that it looks nice. Now that we've done the second piece, so you can see before and after, we are going to go and work on this little drop here. Again, same concept. We make the layer visible. We add a layer mask to it. Command I to invert the layer mask. B for our brush. White brush. And then we paint. We paint. And again, here, take your sweet time to make sure that wherever you're painting, it's going to look natural. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. B to go back to my brush, reducing the size of the brush. There we go. So now that's kind of like, you can't tell where one ends and the other one begins. And here again, I'm going to make sure that this line is neat, and then I'm going to clean up my mess so that now this kind of looks natural and blended in rather than just patched and Photoshop there. And there's a little bit, whoops, there's a little bit over there. But anyway, so, and now if you select each of these and if you mask, like, and if you do this, then you can go back and see your progress. Ta-da! Now we have our final image. Here's another quick case study for you to see what process goes behind creating a compositing. This is my final image, and this is the image that I started with. This is my background image. I shot this at f5.6 because I wanted all my mince pies to be nice and sharp, and also I wanted to make sure that I got a nice action for the sugar here. But I've got many things that I'm not happy with this final frame. So first things first, I wasn't happy with how sharp the background is. So I shot another frame at f2.8 so that I could basically just grab the background. Can you see how much better the bokeh is in the background? The lights are not as sharp. It's a lot more fairy tale like, and I really like this. So basically I patched the background from my shot at f2.8 on top of this. Then what I've done is I took one of my previous images that didn't have as much sugar on the pies. As you can see, there's a lot of sugar here, and it's kind of like covering all the nice top of the pies. So I went back and took one image where there was less sugar powder, and I patched it on top of that. And then for my client, again, because I shot this on a shallow depth of field, what happened was that only the front of the blade of the knife was in focus. And as you can see, the handle is a bit blurred. So I did a mini focus stacking here. I shot another image where I focused on the back of the handle. And then, ta-da, I comped it on top. So now the whole of the knife is sharp. And then I used a clone layer to obviously reconstruct this part of the background at the bottom here. And also I used the clone to get rid of the wire in between the lights and to put some more of those fairy lights because I liked it nice and jolly. So this was the final image that I delivered to my client. And then obviously because I really like this image, what I did was I also got rid of the knife so that I can then reuse this image for something else that doesn't have the product placement, obviously. So here's another little case study for you. And ta-da! That was fun, wasn't it? I love compositing. It makes me so creative, and it's like this geeky thing that I get to do. So I hope you enjoyed the process. But to give you a step-by-step recap of how to plan and execute a composite in Photoshop, plan it in your head, imagine the final scene, shoot all the pieces, make sure you have your light is consistent, composition, framing, everything is consistent. Then when you're in Lightroom, choose your background layer. So the main photo that you're going to put all the other pieces on top. Edit all the rows, develop the rows, then open them, select them all, open as layers in Photoshop so that they're all stacked on top of each other. Then you order and rename the layers so that you're not confused halfway through your image. Then you mask each layer. You brush on each mask to either reveal or hide. And then you do the final touches to the image. So for example, cloning or frequency separation, dodge and burn, anything else that you need to do to get that edit finished. And I'm gonna dig deeper into some of these other topics in other videos. But I hope you found that useful and interesting and fun. Again, this is a slightly more advanced technique, but I am sure that with a little bit of practice, you're gonna master it. And then sky's the limit. Like, you can use it for splashes and like just amazing photography. Everything that we do in the advertising world is often a compositing of multiple images, just to make sure that each piece of the frame looks top notch, its best. So let me know if you liked it, if you liked this topic, and let me know if you have any questions at all. Leave them in the comments, and I'm gonna see you around the platform. Ciao!